Hi there, and welcome to Pause to Reflect, a podcast, or a dogcast, if you will, all about, you guessed it, dogs. Hear inspiring stories of everyday people working with extraordinary dogs and how these dogs help their person in authentic and compelling ways. We will hear from the experts in their fields, including veterinarians, animal behavioralists, trainers, groomers, and so many more. We'll also be delving into the exciting world of competitive canine sports, some of which you may never have heard of. I'm your host, Barbara Ann, so grab your bowl of treats and get ready to have a reason to smile today. Because dogs. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, Julian. Are you still in the military?
No, ma'am. Julian McDonald, 35 years old. I train dogs out here in Navarre, Florida. Navarre is in between Pensacola and Destin. On my free time, which I haven't had a lot of lately, I spearfish, and so it's starting to warm up. So I'll be able to do a little bit more spearfishing here soon. And then obviously with Layka, kind of, I described it to a friend today that her story's been around for like 10 years and it always comes in waves. So whenever that speeding train comes by, you either jump on it and you ride that train until the train stops, and then another year will come by and it'll be like canine Veterans Days coming up, right, on Sunday.
Right.
And so, that's all kind of correlates with, the dog, the film that just came out, and then obviously like her story as well, as a whole. And so, uh, I'm always honored to do things like this, and it's just, I'm just hopping on that train right now and riding it until it decides to stop. And I do that because I feel like I owe it to her to make sure, because there's a lot of responsibility in owning somebody. When you own a creature like that has a story like that, it's almost your responsibility to make sure that there's awareness out there. And I always bring it up about, just essentially dogs who don't get taken care of by the military once they perform their duties.
Right.
you
From
know
what I understand, they referred to her at some point of excess equipment. Is that
yes,
how they
yes,
referred
yes.
to her? So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about how your story began with her. How did you even come to start working with her?
Well, okay, so April 27th. I was United States Army Ranger in the Special Operations. I did 8 combat deployments in a matter of 6 years. On my eighth combat deployment in Afghanistan, my dog Benno on my birthday got shot in the head,
Oh,
and he died. So that was April 27th, 2012. April 28th of 2012, I got Layka. So it was literally from the point of him dying, which I did 4 deployments with him. The next day, I got Layka. And so you have to think, operations still roll on. There's not a whole lot of time for mourning. Even when another soldier dies in the special operations, there's a good chance you're going out the next night. So operations move on. You got to keep momentum going forward. The enemy doesn't care, and so you got to keep fighting the good fight. So anyway, I got Lake of the very next day, which would have been April 28th, and we were running missions by April 29th. Um, I only ran a collective of probably about six ops with her, and all of our operations are direct night action raids. So we wait until the nighttime comes, and then we go after the really really bad guys whenever they're sleeping. Um, so we were on our sixth direct night action raid. We landed on what, in military terms, we would call the Y, which is, if you're going to land a helicopter, when we say we're going to land on the X, that means we're landing in your front yard. If we land on the Y, that means we're landing down the road from you. And if we say we're offsetting, it means that we're landing a few blocks away from you, right? If you want to put it in terms of that way. So we're landing on the Y, which is down the road, and from a compound. And on the Y, we rapidly contain the target compound, and upon rapidly containing the target compound, an older lady came out of the front door, and we had already seen, military age males pushing into the compound throughout the night, utilizing a drone. and they were holding AKs. So we rapidly contained the target compound. This older lady comes running out the front door, and she's like, "Hey, bad guys just broke into my house. They all have AKs." You know what I mean? And so she gets all of her kids and gets all of her kids out. We go ahead and do a head count, make her do a head count to ensure that she has all the children of the house out. And that's when we began to let the enemy know, like, hey, this is us. Come out with your hands up. It doesn't have to get messy. Anyway, they start shooting at us. At that time, we just pulled back because we wanted to protect not only the children and the older lady that had came out, but also the assault force. And we had sent 2 Apache helicopters in to drop that compound. So we hit it with 2 Hellfire missiles. Upon hitting it with 2 Hellfire missiles, we got positive confirmation from command, who told us to go up and do a BDA, which is a battle damage assessment of that target compound. Upon doing an initial battle damage assessment of the target compound, we got another call from command to go ahead and push into the target compound of what was left of it, to clear it of any military age males who could possibly still be alive, take pictures, confirm all that evidence type gathering stuff. So as we moved up to the initial breach of that compound, we had employed Layka. So, essentially my buddy had a grenade. We were going to frag and clear it. The area was already deemed hostile. We had just hit it with bombs. So it was no big deal to go ahead and frag and clear as we go. So my buddy had the grenade. He threw it into the compound. Me and him both had been together for like 8 years, or I'm sorry, for like over 6 years at that point in time. And so we counted down from 8 seconds until the grenade went off. The grenade goes off, and then I released Layka into the compound. Layka went into the compound. She cleared her first point of domination, and then she collapsed down onto her second point of domination, which is, if you're looking at a room, those are just corners, right? She cleared her first corner, she cleared her second corner, and as she was moving to her third corner, that's when she started to engaging what I thought was a dead enemy combatant, right? So because she's so new, and this is only her 6th mission she ever ran, you know, experience is she doesn't have it. So this is her first time ever doing this in any sort of real life situation. So essentially, all I did was, I instead of moving or clearing through the enemy, which clearing through means that you go ahead and put two more into his head, and then you pull your dog off, right? Because you want to make sure they're dead, and that they're not just playing dead or knocked unconscious. But because she was young, I was like, I've been in that situation 100 times before. I was just going to kind of get her more comfortable on the bite before I pulled her off and then shot the dude. But we definitely thought the dude was dead. So anyway, as I'm getting her a better bite and getting her confident on the bite, that's when the dude, I say resurrected himself, because he was missing his leg from the knee down.
He pulled a Lazarus.
Yeah, and so he was probably high on opium, and then that's what a lot of people don't realize out there in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's 90% of the world's heroin comes from Afghanistan. So that's what the Taliban are protecting. When you wonder how do dirt farmers get AKs, you know what I mean? That's how they get AKs, because the drug trade's very rich. You're looking at billions and billions and billions of dollars in that soil. So anyway, we go to pull Layka off. Dude comes back to life, shoots her 4 times at point blank range. I go back to my fallback position that's within the house, and I begin to recall her using my e-collar. And I could hear her yelping, so I knew that she was still alive. I just didn't know what kind of condition she was in. As I approached her, after my good buddy, he was coming in through the adjacent window. He shot the dude and killed him. And then I went and retrieved Layka, and we kind of met each other in the middle of that house there. And I ended up grabbing her, and when I grabbed her, ran her out, we fell back all the way to the predetermined fallback position, where that's usually a min safe distance to drop a 500-pound bomb. So I moved back to the min safe distance to drop where our assets can come in and drop a 500-pound bomb, and we started doing medical aid on her. The AK round, as it came in, the first round came in and ripped through the front of her shoulder, and that hit her in the ball and socket. When it hit her in the ball and socket, it essentially shattered that round, and then it splintered all down the side of her body, The splinters then hit her in the back leg, and then they exited out of the bottom of her paw, and then the top of the paw as well, because that's just how bullets travel, right? Once they hit, the velocity slows down, especially when they shatter. They still have velocity, and now they're just more or less ricocheting off bone and tissue. And so that's where that first injury occurred. The second injury occurred, hit her in the other arm, which was right up in it. It looked like the guy had shot underneath her armpit, and that had completely taken out her whole tricep. So she was missing her tricep on her other front leg. And then she had two superficial rounds that had came across her stomach, right? They didn't penetrate. They just, the guy just missed. Yeah. I mean, missed just very, very, like barely. So, so she was pretty shot up, and so we started doing aid on her. And bottom line is that the Army's not going to risk a multi-million-dollar aircraft to even come get soldiers if they're in the middle of a firefight. So they're definitely not going to risk it for a dog, even if the dog's injured. That's just kind of policy, and that's war. So we had to make sure that the compound was clear again. The assault force went back up there without me. They cleared the compound. That took about another 4 hours. And in that time, I had a PA, which is a physician's assistant, and a medic, and they were both working on her. The only thing I was doing was just helping out with ketamine, pushing ketamine to her, and keeping her out of pain while they worked on her. They worked on her until the birds came in. And then we flew back to our base in Tirana, where we dropped her off and myself at the aid station, and then the rest of the assault force got off at the camp. At the aid station, it took about seven hours to amputate that first front right limb, and then upon amputating it, they went ahead and they assessed the tricep, and they realized that they didn't have the equipment in country to fix her tricep. So that is when they held for the aircraft to fly in a medevac bird, because there's medevac birds going in and out of that country all the time. So she hopped on a medevac flight, went to Germany, where she got another 7-hour surgery to put that tricep back together. Upon putting that tricep back together in Germany, they then shipped her from Germany to San Antonio, Texas, where that's the largest working dog facility in the military, not just the Army, but the whole military and Department of Defense as a whole. They got her there, and then they rehabbed her from May, the end of May, until I got her in August. So I was able to adopt her in August. So you got to think, from the time Benno got shot, April 27th, right? Layka got shot May 22nd. You know what I mean? So you're looking at a less than a month time frame. At that point in time, you have to realize Layka was not a companion of mine at that point in time in my life. Like I didn't care that I cared if she got injured, obviously, because that's my soldier. But I'm still mourning the loss of a dear good friend of mine in Benno, who had done 4 combat deployments, over 600 plus missions, 8 combat ropes, 43 apprehensions, 10 IED finds. I mean, the dog was. They have paintings up of that dog. So, you're looking at, you literally just have your best friend and a very, very skilled asset that dies, and then now you were given essentially a rookie with nothing, that's never done anything, and you throw him into the heat of battle. And so, I didn't have any sort of emotional connection, if you will, with her at that time in my life. It was more or less, I picked her out of the lineup of the dogs because I looked at her and I said, she looks crazy enough that she may save my life. Right. And so,
and between your two dogs, it sounds like they've both saved quite a few
oh
lives.
yeah, absolutely. And so, it's just one of those things. I got her. And so, the reason why I adopted her is I adopted her because I wanted to make sure she was taken care of. Right.
Right.
They were pushing to put her down. I made a big fuss about it. I was like, why are we going to do the enemy's job for them?
Right. I heard that was the quote that I heard was something to the effect of, if you put her down, then they win.
Oh yeah. If you put her in, and I'm not wrong. We don't, go ahead and put soldiers down for missing legs. You know what I mean? So I think that's where just the disconnect with your office soldiers, your officers who work in offices,
Right. Yeah.
and your people on the ground who are actually they have their hands in the dirt in the mud. That's where your disconnect is, and there'll always be a disconnect there. So, essentially, the paper pusher said, "Put her down." I kind of lost my military bearing a little bit, and convinced them to not put her down. And then I was able to adopt her in August of 2012. Um, and then,
Now she was officially retired in
yep,
August of
yeah. She was no
2012,
longer
if I
military
remember. Yeah.
property, and so I signed
Yeah.
all. And it's and when we say retired, they don't have a retirement ceremony. It's
Hmm.
liability paperwork you're signing.
Right.
That's all it is.
Right.
It's
Right.
just liability paperwork. So you got to think when she was still having surgeries, I had my third dog at that point in time. Essentially, when she left Afghanistan and she got to Germany, like after her Germany thing, I lost touch with her a lot because obviously missions go on. I'm still trying to get home safe to get, see my son, and stuff like that. And so they had actually given me a third dog. She woke up from her medical induced coma with missing a limb. Her last clear thing that she remembers is obviously getting shot. And she wakes up and she's in San Antonio and she becomes aggressive. And when she became aggressive, a lot of people were scared of her, even though they're a military dog facility. They were scared of her because she's a special operations dog. And so our dogs are a lot different than your MP dogs or any other dogs that the military has to offer as far as aggression and what they're capable of doing. And so, they put her in a kennel, and she ended up chewing her tail off.
Oh, poor thing.
So because I mean, you got to think like you get shot, and now you wake up in solitary confinement.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? And so you don't have to put it on there, but they, like they would drape blankets over her kennel, thinking that it would calm her down. And so you got to think, you're essentially shot to shit, and they put a kennel, and then they stick you in this small box with a blanket over it where it's dark all the time, and she just kind of lost her mind in there.
Right.
And so, knowing what I know now, training dogs for the last 15 years, you know that that's the wrong answer.
Right.
Like that's not really how you approach things, not in a healthy way.
She win since World War II? She's the only dog since World War II that received what was it? It was
Official Medal
the
of
Medal of
Heroism.
Heroism Award. Yeah, tell me about that.
Yep. Once again, it was nothing that I put in for or jockeyed for her to get. At the end of the day, I just wanted my dog, and I knew I just wanted to make sure she was in good hands. The Air Force at that kennel, they had heard about her and what she had done, and I think they had known that I had lost a dog previously before that, just weeks before that, and they put her in for the award. I had absolutely nothing to do with it. Completely blown away when they did it, and I thought, I mean, what an honor, right?
What an honor.
What
Yeah.
an honor, and that's the way it should be. I mean, here's the deal. So, that's like, you have to wonder, like, why is it only one dog since World War II?
Right.
Right? Like, why is it? And then why hasn't there been any other animals after that? Right? I can name off. Literally, I've trained when I was the head trainer for the special operation kennels. I trained 3 dogs that gave their life.
Right.
And
Right.
so what we asked the special operation dogs to do night in and night out, if they were to receive human awards, there would be generals with sore wrists writing nothing but silver stars
Right.
and Medal of Honors. So I'm honored by it, but once again, that they need to do a better job of, if you're going to give them that sort of status, and then also if you're going to give that sort of award and give that sort of status, right, what does that even mean?
Right.
What does that, you know what I mean? What does that mean besides like a pat on the back?
Right.
It doesn't provide anything for her on the outside right now. You know what I mean? Like maybe some notoriety, maybe some recognition, and that's cool. But at the end of the day, there's a lot more dogs that should be getting that recognition, and then there's a lot more responsibility that the government, in my opinion, and I'm pro government, don't get me wrong, but they waste so much money on
Right. Oh, I know.
on frivolous things. I mean, they spend more money on plastic spoons a year than they do on the health care of veteran dogs. And that's a fact, you know.
Now, is there any kind of legislation? Is anybody pushing for any kind of legislation to really acknowledge these facts?
No,
That
you know, I don't think there is. I think, you know, it's something that there's a lot of people that advocate for it, and there's a lot of people that push for it. I'm lucky enough that I got in with a really good foundation, the War Dog Duco Foundation, and Richard Hogg, and you know, he's a uh, he's a unit, so he's like he came from a special operations unit that's a little bit above ours. It's a lot
okay?
above ours, but he came from I won't mention their names, but he's he's from the unit, and you know, he set up this foundation that essentially dogs like ours, direct action canines, would always be taken care of, right? And so,
Financially and
yep.
with someone adopting them.
No, well, just it's more or less most of the time our dogs get adopted by the handler because nobody else is going to take the dog, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, you know, he takes care of the dog, and his foundation does, which is Scott's Wish, in company with Scott's Wish. They take care of the dog uh, for the remainder of the dog's life, and so their main goal is that the veteran doesn't have to make medical decisions based off of finances for their animal.
Which is supposed to happen just like that. They shouldn't have to. I
No,
mean, we could go on a dialogue about that, about anybody and anything. But
yeah, you know,
especially something like that. They gave their life by no choice of their own. This is what they were asked to do
no,
through their
absolutely,
training.
absolutely. Well, and then you know, and then you got to think about it like they all have microchips in them, right? And they're all
Right.
special microchips. Like they're not like the ones that you get at PetSmart. And so there should be no reason why, at very minimum, dogs with those specific microchips shouldn't be seen for basic care at military vets for free.
100%
For free.
for
You know what I
free.
mean? I mean, if they're
Yep.
just a number, I mean, that's a number you can look up, right? So that's kind of where I stand on with it. You know,
So you brought.
no,
Go
you're
ahead.
good.
So you brought her home, and how did that work out for you?
You know, I brought her home. She came with a plethora of narcotics. So, you know, they just had her on too much junk. And so I stuck her in a kennel for like 3 or 4 days and didn't give her any of the meds. And I made her cold turkey it, and then brought her out and introduced her to the family. And she really like it took like probably a month after I got her home for her to get completely comfortable in a house. I mean, you know, you have a dog that's only allowed to go into houses to bite people. To now going to,
Right.
you know, to now going into a house and, you know, doing all the house things. And so a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of a learning curve, but that's something that we both figured out together. And so to this day, I mean, she's, you know, she's amazing. She just kind of lays around the house and does her own thing now. I mean, she's pretty, you got to think she's had 10 years of doing this now. So she's, you know, she's fat and happy.
A little more
Yeah,
acclimated.
she's pretty acclimated. Now she still does have some edge to her. And you know, she doesn't like when uh, people she doesn't know, if they quickly approach her and then crouch down next to her, she doesn't like that. And she's going to let you know pretty quick, that she doesn't like that. But, or people that think that they can put their face in her face, she's never liked. But I mean, people do it.
You shouldn't do that anyway, regardless, but especially with a dog like
but
that. You should not
people
do
do
that.
it though.
I'm aware.
You know, but I mean, other than that, like she's been a phenomenal companion. You know, if you know, like I said in the beginning, and it sounds bad to say, but you know, in combat, she was, you know, she was something that needed to save my life and my friend's life. On the outside now, what she means more to me than anything is she's after 10 years of doing this, she's my sister. You know, she's a complete piece of my family. You know, without her, and the journey that I've had to go through as far as transitioning to civilian life, from 8 combat deployments, Purple Heart, all that stuff, transitioning to civilian life. When you look at her, and I look at her for inspiration, because it's like, look what she's been through, and she's handling it pretty well. And so sometimes when I, get down on myself, or you don't do 8 combat deployments without having some issues like PTSD and stuff like that, and being blown up and whatnot. So, I look at her for strength, and so that's kind of my rock, is kind of being able to look at her and kind of sucking some strength out of her, to kind of get my ass up off the couch and go do something with the day. You know what I mean? Go achieve something.
I do.
So,
I do know. Yeah. So it sounds like she's still helping, but in a different way with you.
Absolutely.
I know PTSD is huge with soldiers across the board. Do you feel that she also has a form of what we would consider PTSD, but maybe she's just a little more reactionary to something that your average dog would not be?
I think a lot of people, there's a lot of context behind PTSD as like negative, right? Like people, like they see something, they think negative, and they get emotional. That's not how, to me, how I explain it to people, and how my PTSD and stuff like that is that, you hear sights, you hear sounds, you hear those things, and I'm not scared of those things. I get excited about those things, right? Those things excite me. I want to go check it out. I need to go look at it. You know what I mean? I need to make sure that there's nothing, nothing spooky over there, because if there's something spooky over there, I'm going to be spookier. You know what I mean? So I think that's where a lot of people get, there's different forms of it. And obviously people catch it in different ways. And so if Layka hears gunshots go off, or if she here's the AC-130 gun range where the gunships run behind my house and they're firing off rounds, that excites her. Like, she's not scared of that. Like, she's like, there's something dead to go chew on over there. Like, there's, you know what I mean? Like, there's stuff to go. Like, if she sees me going to train dogs and I'm in a multi-cam uniform, like, she's excited. She's like, what are we going to go mess up? What are we going to go do? And so that's, there's different forms of it. And so she doesn't get reactive off stuff like that. That when, there's no violent reactivityness that goes on there. It's more or less maybe a lot of anxiety, and the anxiety is driven from, what are we doing? How are we getting there? You know what I mean? Can I bite? Am I allowed to bite? If we go there, am I allowed to bite something? That's exactly what it is. And so, and that's the same way, you could look at my PTSD. Like, I hear something, I'm like, let me go check it out, because if I get there, like, I may be able to bite something, right? Like, I may be able to feel that sudden rush. And so, that's about that.
So she, from what I read, again, now I'm wondering all my stories that I've read, she had a secondary injury jumping off an ATV.
No, so
that she had to have some implants for, or something.
She got a plate put in her. She wasn't jumping off an ATV. I was riding my 4-wheeler in Kansas, and she came out of nowhere and bit the front tire as it was rolling. And so,
see, there is a difference in the story.
And so her bottom tooth got caught on the tire, and it rolled her over and essentially ran her leg over. I sold the 4-wheeler like the next week. I was very, very upset that even happened. And I blamed myself for it for a long time, because, she had to go to the University of Tennessee for like 6 months and get rehabbed and taken care of. So that's why she was there.
Wow. And now, is it true she's got something else going on right now in December?
Yeah, so in December she had, I guess it happens in a lot of elderly dogs, but she came down with something called vestibular disease, right? And that's essentially vertigo, right? Where she feels dizzy. So, when I initially saw her, I thought she got poisoned. Her pupils were racing, like back and forth.
And she was wobbly.
She was super wobbly and puking. And it almost looked like she kept going into seizures. And so that's actually when that Duco and that foundation reached out, because I had put it out there on my Instagram, like, hey, like, it's right before Christmas. It was upsetting. I've done this a lot with vets. The main vet that I go to, they're phenomenal. They referred me to an emergency vet. I got her to the emergency vet, and the emergency vet was like, we need $5,000 right now. And I was like, okay, hold on, let me go get it out of the ATM. And they said, okay, well, don't forget your dog. And so
No
I
kidding.
went in there, wanted to be a patient. I didn't tell them who my dog was, none of that. They rolled it
Right.
up. I said, money, it doesn't matter. I was like, I'll be back with the money. And they were like, well, don't forget your dog. And at that point, my PTSD nearly came out. Right. So,
Yeah.
how dare you? One. Um, and so, I came back with the money and I gave it to them, and they were like, well, if she stays more than this amount of time, might cost you more money. And I told them, I said, you guys don't have to worry about anything when it comes to money. I was like, she's going to be taken care of. And I kind of gave them at that point in time the quick rundown of her. Because if she starts feeling better, I was like, she's going to try to eat you.
Right.
And they
Yeah.
were like, oh, we've messed with dogs like this before. Right.
Probably
Very
not.
ignorant. They were super
Yeah.
ignorant. We messed with dogs like this before. I was like, well, this is her on National Geographic. Like, I'm trying to now I'm trying to humanize my animal, so the seriousness of this animal. Like, it's not, not to downplay anybody else's dog, but it's not a pit bull that got hit by a wild hog hunting.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or like ran over by a vehicle. Like, you need to know the seriousness of what you have. So I let them know, like, hey, money's not going to be an issue. There's going to be plenty of people calling. And I told them, I was like, can people call and start paying stuff
Donations.
forward? And they were like, oh yeah, sure. So I made a post about it. By noon, they called me and said they didn't have enough staff to keep up with the money. And I said, well, I thought money was an issue. Right. So then the next day they called me in and they didn't want her. They essentially said, hey, look, we're not going to do the spinal tap. We're not going to do the MRI. We're not going to do this. Like, we've treated the symptoms and the symptoms have cleared up. So we're going to release her. And I was like, but you guys didn't do A through Z that you said you were going to do. This has happened before. What they realized is they realized who they had in their
Right.
office, and they didn't want to be the ones that say we fucked up. Right? Like, we fucked up this elderly dog, and now she died
Right.
on our table, or she died in our care, because a dog like her with that name would tank their company, right? So it's more of a liability for her to even be there, rather than anything else. And so that's when Richard Hogg reached out to me and was like, no, 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 no. He was like, this is too easy. We coordinated with Scott's Wish. We got her to the Auburn University Pet Med facility in Gulf Breeze. And so the surgeon that was actually there had actually put Layka's tricep together in Germany.
So
He was very
familiar with her.
familiar with her. And so, that's when he brought up that, does she still have shrapnel in her face? And I was like, what do you mean shrapnel in her face?
You didn't
and
know.
He was like, we can't run an MRI until we do a CT scan to confirm whether or not the shrapnel's still in her face. I had no idea about this. So it was a good thing he was there. So yeah, she still did. She had a little piece of shrapnel that's right here, where her nose is at. But no, I mean, it ended up working out, and so I got really good friends in the Auburn Pet Med. I don't plan on moving anytime soon, and that's probably where I'll be taking her from here on out.
Right. So, is there something that you feel that people misunderstand about Layka?
That Layka?
Yeah.
That she's just not a pet. You know what I mean? Like, she's not a pet type dog. She's not your typical dog. I think she's definitely not misunderstood. Her breed,
Except for the people who put their face down and say hi.
that's probably the only thing that's misunderstood, is that right there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just people not respecting boundaries when it comes to her. Like, she's very appealing through the eyes, and so I think people really are drawn to her. And so, and then they see her and they're like, oh man, look at her, and they know her story. And so, I think there's just something that doesn't compute with their brain, that doesn't fire correctly, that they're like, oh, let me touch it. You know what I mean? Like, let me touch it. Let
I
me
do.
get let me touch the dragon. And it's like, it's still a dragon. You know what I mean?
Don't do it.
It's still a dragon, man. Like,
Don't
doesn't matter what it is. So,
that's too funny.
That's it. I think, I think the biggest thing I want people to know is just, just people to know that these dogs aren't taken care of like they should be. And I don't know if there is any sort of congressional push, but that foundation that my dog's a part of, I would like for them to know that there's a place that they can donate, where soldiers like me will have their dogs taken care of like that for the rest of their lives.
And tell me the name of that one more time.
It's can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Perfect. Yeah. It is, and you have my Instagram, right?
I do, and I'm going to actually have you tell everybody how they can follow Layka.
Absolutely.
If they want to.
So if you were to go to my Instagram, you would see on my header it says Julian McDonald, father, canine master trainer, spear fisherman, weightlifter. You'll see that Scots Wish, www.scotswish.org/in-honor-of-Duco.
And that's on your Instagram. I'll look that up and link that to our podcast.
And so, my Instagram is Trent. That's TRENT_canine, and then Layka's is MPC __Layka LAYKA, and she'll be her cover photos. Obviously, that beautiful National Geographic cover.
Perfect. All right. Well, I thank you very much, Julian, for spending some time with me today. And
Absolutely.
I know yesterday, how's your daughter doing, by the way?
She's
meant
good.
to ask you that. Yeah,
she's good. She's
all
good.
is well.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I had 4, so I know that whole jungle.
Yeah, she's like a boy too. It's scary. The world's not ready. I keep telling her mom, I was like, she's gonna make some man really miserable one day. I'm probably
or it'll be the best woman he ever met. Let me tell you from experience, the world needs more of her. I will say that.
Ma'am.
If there,
yes,
from what I've seen on your Instagram, she's something to be reckoned with. She's fabulous.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm talking about your daughter.
Oh, thank you.
Again, thank you very much for your time, and I will lead everybody to that. And again, if people wish to follow Layka, it's MPC __, and then her name, LAYKA, and that's her Instagram. Well, this wraps up today's episode, and I must admit, Layka's story was most definitely not the story that I had in my head. I cannot express to you how happy I am about this fact. To be able to hear the real story, as told by Trent, was nothing short of exhilarating for me. So I will link the IGs of both Layka and Trent, should you wish to follow them. And as always, I thank you for listening, and I hope you will join us next time. Bye now.